In this podcast, we will be discussing on a book called 12 Rules for Life, written by Jordan B. Peterson. What is the book about? 12 Rules for Life gives readers a list of life's most pressing worries, as well as issues that have been in the human brain since the dawn of humanity. Jordan B. Peterson has compiled 12 recommendations for living a meaningful life from some of the most enduring philosophical and religious declarations, as well as lessons from our most beloved stories. These are obvious and consistent ideas that everyone may live by, drawing on philosophy, psychology, history, and myth. Who is this for? This book could be extremely useful for psychology students, readers seeking significance in their lives, and people interested in mythology's lessons. Introduction. What is the benefit for you from this book? Get some sound, practical counsel to help you navigate life's twists and turns. Pinocchio is a story about a small puppet who gets his wish. He gets to be a genuine, independent boy after losing the threads that controlled his existence. But Pinocchio didn't comprehend that this meant dealing with all of life's risks, as well as the bitter lessons learnt via honesty, friendship, and family. Pinocchio, like many other popular myths, fairy tales, and religious parables, portrays the process of finding purpose in life as a balancing act between order and chaos, the familiar and the unfamiliar, or safety and adventure. People continue to reread historical books, as well as works by philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle, because we crave for universal principles and rules to give our life significance. These are the themes that author Jordan B. Peterson considered when compiling a new list of 12 such ideals to guide modern people through today's turbulent times. You'll learn what crabs can teach us about confidence, what a lotus blossom can teach us about finding purpose in life, and what young skateboarders can teach us about human nature in the upcoming chapters. Chapter 1. Because hierarchies are a prevalent feature of life in nations all across the world, take use of your superb posture. You have probably heard the term pecking order before, right? Do you know where it came from? Any thoughts? It was coined by Thorleif Skjelderup Ebb, a Norwegian naturalist who was researching barnyard chickens in the 1920s, when he found a distinct hierarchy among these birds. The healthiest, strongest chickens were always first to peck when the chicken feed arrived. The weakest birds, with their feathers coming out, were relegated to pecking at the crumbs left remaining. Pecking instructions like this aren't just found in chickens, they are found all over the animal kingdom. Lobsters, for example, will actively compete for the nicest and most secure shelter sites, whether they are in the ocean or raised in captivity. Scientists have discovered that the winners and losers in these competitive disputes have differing chemical balances in their brains. The hormone serotonin to octopamine ratio will be higher in winners, whereas it will be lower in losers. These levels can even change lobster posture. Higher amounts of serotonin make winners more nimble and upright, whereas higher levels of octopamine make losers tight and curled up. This distinction will play a role in future clashes, as the upright lobsters will appear larger and more menacing, causing the tense lobsters to remain subservient. Humans, as you might expect, have comparable hierarchies and cycles of winning and losing. Alcoholics and depressed people are less inclined to participate in competitive situations, according to studies, which leads to more inactivity, low self-esteem, and sadness. Those on a winning run, on the other hand, frequently have a swaggering and confident demeanor, which might help them maintain their winning streak. Humans, like lobsters, are always comparing themselves to one another, and we correlate intelligence with physical appearance. So, if you want to gain an advantage, remember the first rule: keep your head high and adopt a winning stance. Chapter 2. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would show to a loved one. Would you question the doctor and leave the prescription unfilled if your dog was sick and the vet prescribed medication? Despite this, 1/3 of individuals disregard doctors' prescriptions, raising the question of why we treat our dogs better than ourselves. Part of the explanation is that we feel self-loathing because we are always aware of our imperfections, which can lead to unneeded self-punishment and a belief that we are unworthy of feeling happy. As a result, we look after others more than ourselves. This concept, that we are worthless, may be traced all the way back to Adam and Eve's expulsion from the Garden of Eden. In this symbolic story, Adam and Eve represent all humans, and a wicked serpent tricks them into eating the forbidden apple of knowledge. Humans are considered as perpetually ruined with wickedness if they heed the snake's advice. While the myth of the Garden of Eden makes us aware of our dark side and can reinforce the feeling that we don't deserve good things, it can also be interpreted in another way. It is not just us who are corrupted, but the entire universe. The humans and the serpent of the garden represent the natural order and chaos of the entire planet. This duality of nature is also reflected in Eastern philosophy by the two sides of the yin-yang symbol. There is a light and a dark side, yet both sides contain a piece of the other, and neither can exist without the other. Harmony is established in this circumstance by striking a healthy balance between light and dark, and one should avoid going too far in either side. For instance, if a parent tries to keep their child from being exposed to anything wrong, they are merely replacing chaos with the tyranny of too much order. To put it another way, trying to be perfect is pointless. This leads to the second rule. Treat yourself as if you were a family member. So, look after yourself, but don't fight chaos, since it's a losing battle. And instead of focusing on what makes you happy, try to focus on what is best for you. You may not have wanted to clean your teeth or wear mittens as a child, but these are important habits to develop. You must identify your goals as an adult in order to define who you are and the path you wish to take in life. Then you'll figure out what measures you should do and what actions are best for you. Chapter 3. The wrong friends can bring you down, so pick your companions carefully. One of the author's boyhood pals never left the plains of Fairview, Alberta, in northern Canada. Instead, he stayed in town and became one of the town's lazy and irresponsible person. The author would come home every now and again to catch up with his friend, and with each visit, his friend's slow, tragic demise grew more apparent. What was once young potential has turned into resentment of aging. Those ne'er-do-wells were clearly dragging his friend down and holding him back in life. And anyone, anywhere, can be affected by this. When an underachiever is placed in a group of great performers in the workplace, a similar dynamic might emerge. The management may believe that by doing so, the problematic employee will pick up positive habits from the other employees. However, research demonstrates that the opposite is more common, with negative habits spreading and lowering everyone's performance. This is why the third guideline is to surround yourself with supportive people, as these are the types of friendships that can help you alter your life. Picking your friends is a wise decision that is neither selfish nor snooty. Friendships that are supportive and encouraging go both ways. When you need a boost, they will be there for you, and if your buddy needs assistance recovering from a setback or improving, you will be there for them. This dynamic can promote individual success, while also allowing a team to achieve tremendous social successes. When the author left Fairview for college, he joined a group of like-minded people, who assisted one another in their studies and other endeavors, such as starting a newspaper and establishing a thriving student union. When your friends don't tolerate your wallowing in negativity, you know you have excellent friends. They want the best for you, so they will encourage you to snap out of it and get back on track. Chapter 4. Progress is made by comparing yourself to your previous accomplishments, not by comparing yourself to others. There was a time when being a large fish in a tiny pond was a thing. However, thanks to the internet, even the idea of a tiny community has become obsolete. We are all part of a global society these days, and no matter where you are, someone is always better than you. This leads to the subject of self-criticism. It is now necessary to be critical of oneself. Otherwise, we would have nothing to strive for, no incentive to improve ourselves, and our lives would swiftly become meaningless. Fortunately, it's human nature to regard the present as inadequate and the future as offering far more. This propensity serves a purpose. It keeps us motivated to go forward and take action. Self-criticism, on the other hand, can turn unpleasant when it becomes all about comparing ourselves to others. We soon lose track of our progress when this happens. First and foremost, this causes us to think in binary terms. We have either succeeded or failed. This hinders us from noticing the little, but significant gains that occur over time. By focusing on a particular aspect of our lives and exaggerating it, comparisons cause us to lose sight of the big picture. Let's imagine you are looking back on the previous year and realize you weren't as productive at work as some of your colleagues. You can feel like a complete failure right away. However, if you zoom out and consider all elements of your life, you may find that you have made significant advances in your family life. As a result, the fourth guideline is to never compare yourself to others and to always measure yourself by your own previous achievements. You can keep moving forward by comparing current outcomes to previous ones. If you start to believe that you're always winning, it's a sign that you need to take more chances and set more demanding goals for yourself. Consider yourself a home inspector when reviewing your progress. This entails examining everything from top to bottom and categorizing each issue. Is the flaw cosmetic or structural? Make a list of items that need to be improved before you grant your stamp of approval. This method is likely to keep you so focused on yourself that you won't be bothered about how you compare to others. Chapter 5. It is the responsibility of parents to develop responsible and kind children. If you have ever witnessed parents ignore a misbehaving child, you may have pondered whether they are simply lousy parents or cleverly enabling the child to tire himself out. Child-rearing methods have evolved over time, frequently as a result of the natural world. The nature versus nurture argument, as well as conflicting viewpoints on the types of impulses we are born with. In the 18th century, the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau promoted a common assumption that our prehistoric forebears were pleasant, soft, and childlike. They blamed our history of conflict and violence on civilization's corrupting impact on us. However, we now have a better understanding that humans are born with violent inclinations and must learn to become kinder, gentler, and more civilized adults. After all, most businesses are a vision of peace in comparison to how vicious children may be on a playground. According to the author, it is up to parents to ensure that their naturally aggressive child learns how to be a well-adjusted adult, which takes us to the fifth rule. Parents must raise a responsible and lovable human person, not just a friend. This might be difficult because no one likes being the bad guy. Children, on the other hand, are aggressive because they have a natural instinct to test boundaries in order to discover where society's lines are drawn. As a result, when drawing those lines, a parent must be forceful and decisive. While this may not sound like fun, consider this: if they don't learn these things from a loving, understanding parent, they will learn them later in a less loving and understanding manner. So, here are 3 important parenting techniques. The first is to keep the rules to a minimum. Too many restrictions lead to frustrated children, who are continually confronted with obstacles. So stick to a few simple, easy to understand rules, like never biting, kicking, or hitting somebody unless in self-defense. The second is to utilize the least amount of force possible. Only when the consequences are made apparent can effective and fair punishment be implemented. The punishment must also fit the offense, meaning that it should only be as harsh as is necessary to teach a child not to breach the rule again. A dissatisfied expression is sometimes enough, other times, a week without video games is required. The third option is to arrive in pairs. Children are resourceful, and they will try to get their way by pitting one parent against the other, so maintaining a united front is critical. Also, while every parent makes mistakes, if you have a supportive partner, you will be more likely to identify and correct them. Chapter 6. There are many injustices in the world, but we should not blame others for our circumstances. It's pointless to mince words. The world is full with difficulties and misery, but this isn't cause for despair. Nonetheless, many people have considered life as so cruel and unfair throughout history that desperate measures are necessary. Leo Tolstoy, a Russian author, considered reality as so absurdly unjust that he proposed only 4 viable responses: childish ignorance, hedonistic pleasure, suicide, or perseverance in the face of adversity. In his article, A Confession, Tolstoy studied both perspectives and concluded that suicide was the most honest reaction, while struggling on was an indication of his weak incapacity to adopt the necessary decision. Others have reacted similarly, but in acts known as murder-suicides, such as the Sandy Hook or Columbine school shootings, they choose to take the lives of others along with their own. In the United States, there had been 1,000 shootings in the previous 1,260 days, in which someone had killed 4 or more people before shooting themselves, in many cases. But, despite Tolstoy's pessimism, you shouldn't blame the world, no matter how much you have suffered or how cruel and unjust life has been to you. The 6th rule of life suggests that you should accept responsibility for your own life before passing judgment on the rest of the world. Another Russian writer, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, thought that it was possible to reject life's cruelty, even while it was being terrible to you. Despite fighting against the Nazis as a communist during World War II, Solzhenitsyn was imprisoned by his own country after the war. As if living in a Russian gulag wasn't horrible enough, he was diagnosed with cancer while incarcerated. Despite this, Solzhenitsyn did not hold the world responsible for his fate. He accepted responsibility for his role in helping the Communist Party that had imprisoned him, and resolved to spend the remaining time to do something good and significant in the world. He wrote The Gulag Archipelago, a history as well as a stinging critique of the Soviet camps he had witnessed firsthand. The book was essential in dispelling any remaining support for Stalin's brand of communism among intellectual circles around the world. Chapter 7. Sacrifice may be a meaningful act, and we should prioritize significance above instant gratification. Have you heard the tale of the monkey who got his hand caught in the cookie jar? According to legend, a cookie was left inside an open jar, and the opening was just large enough for the monkey's hand to enter, but not large enough for his fist to emerge with the treat inside. So, if he insisted on holding onto his treat, he'd be stuck. The moral of the story is that greed has a cost. The monkey was captured because he refused to give up the cookie. How does this compare to human behavior? How many people engage in daily activities that aren't in their best interests? And how many people are unwilling to make sacrifices for their own good? One of the consequences of viewing the world as a pit of misery is that it becomes much easier to justify a life centered on temporary pleasures that would make it more bearable. Plus, it can't be too horrible if it makes you happy, right? Binge eating and drinking, drug usage, sexual depravity, and other self-harming activities all follow this reasoning. The other side of this debate is sacrifice, the kind that results in better things in the future by sacrificing something today. This dates back to ancient times, when tribes would set away food for winter, or to aid individuals in the society who couldn't hunt or farm. This is another subject that appears frequently in the Bible. When God sent Adam and Eve out of paradise, it's evident that their original sin is to blame for everyone's hard and miserable life. However, our pain in this life is the price we must pay in order to enjoy the pleasures of the afterlife. The 7th guideline is to prioritize significant goals over momentary delight. You may believe that this is a straightforward principle that most people already follow. After all, we give up our time to go to work, and work long hours today in order to take a vacation later, or relax on a beach in the summer. But this extends beyond self-sacrifice. There are huge and tiny things we may give up for the greater good, and the bigger the sacrifice, the more rewarding it can be. It may be beneficial to consider the lotus flower. This plant begins its existence at the bottom of a lake, slowly emerging from the darkness until it breaks through the water's surface and blooms in the sunlight. In other words, if you stick with something and are willing to sacrifice in order to achieve your goal, you will be rewarded. Chapter 8. Lies are a popular self-deception strategy, yet we should aim to live truthfully. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, felt that the power of a person's soul could be measured by how much unadulterated truth they could tolerate. Despite the fact that truth is generally regarded as a precious commodity in our culture, we continue to utter lies on a regular basis. One of the primary motivations for lying to ourselves and others is to obtain what we believe we desire. These life lies, as described by Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler, are the things we'll do and say to make a badly thought-out aim a reality. You might imagine your retirement as taking place on a remote beach in Mexico, complete with an endless supply of margaritas. This type of objective might be so appealing that you'll continue to delude yourself into believing it's achievable, even as events accumulate that make it seem increasingly improbable. You might even develop allergies to the sun, beach, and alcohol, but you will keep lying to yourself about this wonderful plan, which isn't actually a plan at all, because you haven't identified any specific actions that could make it a reality. These kinds of delusions are frequently associated with our ability to convince ourselves that we already know everything we need to know. This is a particularly dumb viewpoint to hold, since it stifles our natural desire to learn and improve. Worse, and far more horrible, things can happen if you live a falsehood and refuse to acknowledge the reality. Lucifer is portrayed as a sensible figure in John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost, but he gets too proud and enamored with his abilities, to the point where he and his followers are expelled from heaven for daring to contradict God's ultimate truth. This establishes rule number 8. Stop lying and start telling the truth. You don't have to abandon all of your lofty ambitions, but you should be adaptable so that your objectives are realistic and reflect reality. As a result, as your understanding and worldview evolve, so should your objectives. If your life is off course, it may be time to question the present reality you're believing, the one that makes you feel weak, rejected, or unworthy, and reassert your personal truth, so you can get back on track. Chapter 9. Conversations should be used to learn and grow, rather than to compete. Socrates, the ancient philosopher, is still regarded as one of the brightest men who have lived thousands of years after his death. One of the reasons for this is his conviction that the only thing he could be confident of was that he knew nothing, which drove his talks and willingness to learn. It should be a comparable approach to thinking when you engage in actual discussion. Listening to oneself while exploring two sides of an issue is what it means to think things over. As a result, you're essentially inventing your own internal dialogue, which can be challenging given the requirement to authentically reflect both perspectives while being objective in your conclusion. One of the main reasons why individuals converse is so that they can more readily convey opposing viewpoints and reach a consensus. Even children do it. If one child thinks it would be enjoyable to play on a roof, they may recommend it to a friend, who then warns them about the dangers. The subsequent discussion allows the child, who had the original idea, to examine the new perspective, assess the likelihood of someone falling and injuring themselves, and ideally make the best option possible. Conversations, on the other hand, rarely go this way. Instead, one or both participants will refuse to listen and regard the conversation as a battle in which they must win to validate their prejudices. So, instead than listening to what the other person has to say, they'll be thinking about what to say next, or acting as if it's a game of one-upmanship. This is why the 9th guideline is to pay attention to what others have to say, assuming you can learn anything from them. Listening and then summarizing, or recapping out loud what the other person just said, is a simple way to improve your conversational skills. This serves multiple purposes. It ensures that you've heard things accurately while also aiding memory retention. It also decreases the probability of twisting or oversimplifying details to suit your point of view. The truth can be difficult, and it's even more hard to take in information that requires you to adjust your beliefs and preconceptions. However, you must pay this price as part of the wonderful process of learning and growing. Chapter 10. Life's complexities should be met with plain and precise language. Life is a vast and complex tapestry, yet we tend to view only the isolated pieces that we need to see. When you notice an apple on the ground while walking, you probably don't consider the branch, tree, roots, and soil that were all connected before it fell. The reason for this is that we only notice or pay attention to things that are either helpful to us or in the way of our goals. We notice the apple because it represents food and nourishment. However, we ignore the tree and the soil because they are useless in meeting our requirements. Of course, we can't think about everything all of the time. The world is simply too complicated for that. So the mind simplifies things for us so we can get on with our lives. However, something can happen every now and then to disrupt our worldview and make everything appear chaotic. This is why rule number 10 is so crucial: use exact terminology. What is the benefit of this? Think about the term vehicle. Do you know what an automobile is? It's a mode of transportation that takes you from point A to point B. But if this vehicle breaks down halfway between A and B, do you know how an automobile works in detail? Can you open the hood and repair this complicated machine? When your automobile breaks down, you may feel basic inclinations to curse and maybe kick the vehicle for no longer being such a simple thing. This is what happens when things become complex and chaotic. Therefore, you must restore order by explaining what went wrong clearly and explicitly. When your body breaks down and you get ill, the same thing must happen. Because there could be a variety of issues at play, you must inform your doctor of your specific symptoms. Is your stomach hurting, or do you have a fever? Was it after you ate something that it started? What was it, exactly? You may restore order and take measures to start feeling better by being exact. Your relationships will function more easily if you use precise terminology. Is there something your partner does that irritates you, such as forgetting to clean up after themselves? The sooner you can be honest and accurate with them, the better. Chapter 11. Although there are some wicked and tyrannical men, we must not stifle human nature. The author of George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier concludes that socialism was gaining supporters in England not because of sympathy for the difficult conditions faced by miners, but because of contempt for the wealthy and powerful. Similar beliefs exist now concerning the patriarchy, or male-dominated authority. Max Horkheimer of the Marxist-based Frankfurt School, a proponent of so-called critical theory, is one important source of patriarchal animosity. Instead of aiming to empower women, he believed that education and intellectualism should strive to battle and remove the powerful oppressors in a culture, namely the governing males. Similarly, the recommended political activity in today's humanities classes around the world is the destruction of our macho society. Everything is about destroying rather than fixing or developing, according to the author, and this has resulted in an outrage directed towards male behavior that is sometimes harsh and short-sighted. Many male students, for example, are frequently accused of being patriarchal, yet, the way to moral reform should not include considering every man as a potential sex offender. While many men have acted in deplorable ways, the author contends that men have also used their inherently aggressive tendencies for good, such as healthy competition, exploring perilous areas, and generating much-needed advancements. Skateboarders come to mind for the author. Amazing skateboarders demonstrated great fearlessness and a desire to accept danger outside some of the buildings on the University of Toronto campus. However, local officials opted to make skateboarding illegal on campus. That takes us to rule number 11. Young skateboarders shouldn't be bothered by you. We can't make regulations that are incompatible with who we are as individuals. Our laws must indeed protect us, but they must not do so at the expense of people's good traits. We've really seen a fairly decent fictionalized picture of what may happen when men's masculinity is torn away. Aggression can therefore become a forbidden fruit, as the scenario in Fight Club reveals, manifesting itself in fascist inclinations. The present upsurge of right-wing politics is another real-world reaction to emasculation. Women don't want males to grow up without the opportunity to discover things for themselves and be self-sufficient. He claims that every boy has a mother, and what sort of mother would wish to raise a man-child? Chapter 12. Life is difficult and full of sorrows, thus it's crucial to appreciate the minor pleasures. Have you ever had to look after someone who was ill? It can be one of life's most challenging tasks. Since she was 6 years old, the author's daughter has suffered from severe arthritis. She has been in constant pain, requiring numerous injections and multiple joint replacement surgeries. You could think life is unjust if you have a daughter in this circumstance, but it's crucial to remember that the dark pieces of anguish, misery, and sadness are what give the happy moments their meaning. Think about Superman. The character was extremely popular when it was first introduced. However, the comic book writers continued to bestow power onto him until he was practically unstoppable. Naturally, readers began to find him quite dull. Superman's accomplishments are hollow if there is no threat. Similarly, good times would be meaningless if we didn't have to fight our way through obstacles and pain to get there. This is why Rule 12 is so important. Make the most of even the tiniest pleasures that life has to offer. This rule will ensure that you embrace life and enjoy anything wonderful that comes your way. You'll also be able to see yourself through difficult moments, even if they last a long period. After years of suffering and misery, the author's daughter met a new physiotherapist who helped her regain movement, a sense of normalcy, and a significant reduction in pain. There may be more issues down the road, but for the time being, they are both content to enjoy the benefits. This is the best attitude to have. It's the kind that makes you stop and pet a cat when you're walking down the street. Remember that there is no day without night, and that there is no order without chaos. Life is full of hardship, but it is also what gives our perseverance purpose, and makes the moments of serenity so gratifying. Conclusion of the book's summary. The book's main message is that navigating through life is a never-ending battle packed with hardships and tribulations, and if there's one thing you can count on in life, it's that there will always be more problems. But, as ephemeral these times may be, there is beauty and delight to be found. You can only do your best, be honest and truthful, and avoid being selfish or proud. It's also critical to accept responsibility for your own fate rather than blaming others or the world for your shortcomings. Only you have the ability to better your life. How was I wrong? Is a good question to ask yourself. You may not like the answer, but it's a good way to keep learning and being honest. You'll be able to experience the satisfaction of making progress every day, as you strive to be a better human being, if you ask yourself this question on a frequent basis. This is the end of the podcast. Let us know if you have any feedback. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This will encourage us to produce more podcasts of this type. Check out our playlist section to find your favorite genres. Thank you for your time, and good luck with your day.